Martin, so good to have you with us. Nice, friendly face to join, and a much more welcome change compared to just seeing Patric all the time.
I understand that, and well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's totally our pleasure. Patric, I know we've invested in Lun with a great deal of conviction, but do you remember what Lun does?
I have a hard time, I must say. Martin, I think we first got to know each other April last year, 2022. And it was pretty much me liking you, and then there was some money, but I never told Shub what it actually is you're doing. So maybe you tell Shub.
Sure. Yes, so as you told me, I didn't prepare anything, so I wasn't prepared for that. No, I'm kidding. What we do at Lun is we are designing the operating system for tradespeople to engage in the energy renovation. So to put it in a bit fewer buzzwords, we are lacking today already skilled labor and tradespeople, that plumbers, electricians, HVAC people in general. We are going to have even fewer of them in 2030 by all accounts from all the forecasts that we see. And they are the people that are going to make the energy transition happen in all the buildings. And the buildings are about 40% of our energy consumption globally, if I recall correctly. And usually the correlation between energy consumption and the carbon emissions is very, very high, if that makes sense. So basically, to go back to where I started initially, if we don't have enough skilled labor, then it will be very difficult to decarbonize our buildings, and then it will be very difficult to decarbonize our society and to reach our net zero goals. So what we're doing is building the software that makes the skilled labor that exists way more efficient, and specifically making the energy renovation much more attractive to them, because what people don't realize is that it's not heat pump or nothing. It's heat pumps or kitchens and bathrooms and toilets, etc. So we're trying to move them away from doing the stuff that might not be required and demanded by our climate objective to doing the stuff that will help us all, basically.
And Martin, what does design software have to do with heat pumps in your case?
Yes. So the complexity of heat pump installation specifically is you need to put something new that functions differently into something old. So for most cases, so I think you might know the statistics better, but 90% of the buildings that exist today will exist in 2050 or something like that. So if we need to decarbonize them, we basically need to go into every single building, remove the oil boiler or the gas boiler or whatever exists today, replace it with a heat pump. But it functions differently. A heat pump functions very well when you have when the temperature that's required by the radiators or the floor heating is low, and when you have a building that's heated up by an oil boiler or gas boiler, the temperature can be actually very, very high. So you need to understand the house and the home very, very well to make sure that the new system you put in will fit into the old system that exists already. Because if you don't do that, that'll be very expensive, that'll be very annoying, you'll make a lot of mistakes as a tradesperson. And in general, there's just a lot of complexity because you need to understand very well the economics, you need to understand the house, you need to understand a bunch of different things that need to go together in one spot to make a heat pump installation work very well for the consumer, and for the tradesperson doing it, basically.
So true story. My house was built in 2009. So live in Germany. My house was built in 2019. So not even 4 years old. And for reasons I'm not going to share today, I have 2 heat pumps, not one. And the second heat pump the second heat pump external unit sits on top of the first heat pump's external unit on the outside of one of my building walls, basically the exterior wall of the technicality room. And I had actually an installer here last week to do some maintenance, and I only bought the home used, so I was not the one new building it. And so this installer was the one who actually did the piping for the second heat pump. And he told me the story that, the original installers who put the external unit and the internal unit in place, they couldn't get the piping done. And the whole construction was basically threatened to be delayed by a few days until they could figure out how to do the piping. And then he said, yeah, but then I got my guys here and I told the owner, I'm just going to run the pumping, the piping, and then it's going to work. And so now the piping, it's functional, it works. But when you come in, it probably wouldn't win a beauty contest. You know what I mean? So is that a thing you can fix with design software for me, Martin?
No, I don't think we'll be able to fix 100% of the cases. I think what we're trying to do is to build the highway where we, the lowest hanging fruits, we make them very easy to do and remove the mistakes that can happen there. Because I think even of the easiest cases, where you have a lot of space inside, where the radiators function perfectly, etc., there are mistakes for the simple reason that the person that does the visit of the home is not necessarily the person that does the installation. And that, it might be the husband that was there when the visit was done and then agreed upon something, and then it's actually the wife who's there when the installation happens, and then she doesn't agree with the design and things like that. It might be the opposite, just to be very clear. So it has nothing to do with gender. And in these situations, so things go wrong, and what we're trying to do is allow the tradespeople to structure their work, capture as much as possible, as much as possible to make sure that along all the steps in the process, everything is smooth. And it goes beyond just the installation, it also goes for the maintenance, etc. You need to have a good understanding, because we know that OEMs have about 5 times the support. They spend 5 times as much on support for heat pumps than they do on gas boilers for a single unit, basically. So that's the kind of stuff where we think that structuring the data very, very clearly, making sure that there's an alignment between everyone in the journey, basically, makes it much, much easier to have great installations and profitable installations. For a long time, I think that the heat pump industry was a demand constraint problem. So, it was just impossible to get people to buy heat pump because in my view, you have to, when the heat pump is not worth it, then you have to like physics and climate to think they're nice, because the cons are they make a bit more noise in general. They cost quite a bit more upfront, and in many countries, like in Germany, the payback time is just not worth it. But last year it changed completely, where it was completely supply constrained, where there was not enough labor, there was not enough hardware either. So this year is a bit less because the natural gas price fell again. But we know in the future, with regulations in general, with the scarcity of resources, we're going to be in the state where it's the ecosystem is completely supply constrained, and that's what we're building for.
Yeah, you must be the biggest fan of the German Green Party right now, aren't you?
Well, I think they gave up a bit too easily, didn't they? No, I think, it's not a law yet, so there's still a little bit of ambiguity around certain things. The way we see it is that it's inevitable that heat pumps will dominate the heating market, be it small ones in individual homes or large ones in district heating.
Right.
It's very unlikely that from physics, I have a personal belief that things will converge towards the physical reality, if that makes sense. And their heat pump is completely amazing because you get that much more energy out of a lot less energy. So if you look, maybe not next year, not the year after, but if you look in the horizon 2030, it's a complete no-brainer. And if incentives are aligned, which I believe over time they tend to align, then yes, we'll be in a situation where we need a lot more heat pumps, we need a lot more skilled labor, and we need that labor to be a lot more efficient.
So Martin, what I took away from what you said about what Lun does, right? There's quite a bit of stuff going on about climate, sustainability, decarbonization, reducing dependency on fossil fuels. Obviously, all of that is great, right? I think
Yes.
I think the planet needs it. Quite a few customers certainly seem to demand it. I also took away a few things about the labor crisis, how there's perhaps something Lun is doing about, bringing a unique model and a unique approach, marrying a problem statement also with the labor crisis, and how, as in for a specific trade, and how that can be used to really capture the market need at a very important turning point. But I didn't hear anything about AI, man. Where's the AI in all of this?
It's a big question, something that we ask ourselves. We have like a weekly huddle, no, a daily huddle that's about 2 hours where we ask ourselves how we can deploy AI.
Money well spent.
Yes, exactly. Where we invite the entire team, so we're like 16 people around the bush, like around a fire, just really discussing these things. No, listen, I think that we are certain things that excite me a lot on this or the ability. I think for me it's more the capture. So what we see right now on what's happening, the new release with of Apple releasing. Sorry,
Vision Pro.
I'll turn that off. I'm sorry.
Speaking of Apple, right?
Yeah,
that's all the orders coming in, Martin.
The new iPhone coming out with it, but mostly with the software updates they do, where it's basically really easy to capture for any stupid person just like me to capture a home decently in a way that would be sufficient for us to do the work of an expert plumber. So can you basically make sure that the instead of a qualified plumber, can you bring someone who's not as qualified to do the visit and do the sale, which would reduce the time spent by a plumber maybe by a couple hours every day on work that's where they're not specialists and they might not enjoy. So I think that's something that's quite interesting, and that there's something about capture there. There's something about scene recreation. So basically, how do you make sure that the capture also is somehow looks like the real world on the other side? There's something where we haven't gotten to yet, but with the large language models, there might be something about. I mean, the way that you install heat pump today, or at least the way that the OEMs want you to install heat pump, is that you open up the manual and then you read the 100 pages, and then you follow that, and then at the end you're an expert, right? Which is usually so. I mean, the truth is that many plumbers, electricians, especially plumbers, are dyslexic or have dyslexia. Which makes it very difficult for them to. I mean, which makes it more complicated, at least, for them to read certain for that specific audience. And I think that there might be opportunities to make their lives easier to convert, whatever wall of text the OEMs write in very complicated words to something that can be more related to the installation itself. But otherwise, I mean, the truth is also that we're operating in the real world where a lot of the AI is maybe a bit gimmicky. It helps a lot in the daily days. I mean, in the daily life when we want to send emails, ChatGPT is pretty good at that. At like sending. I mean, not even kidding. For company building, there are certain things like when you have to do certain compliance things or you have to apply for certain things. I think ChatGPT has gotten very good at that. So what might take before 3-4 days or full time to write an application, now ChatGPT can do it probably better than you would otherwise do in 2 hours. And that's, I think, so. In terms of company building, not necessarily apply to our domain. I think that's pretty good.
So Shub, I never shared this with you, but actually one of the recurring themes of Martin's and my WhatsApp chat are about like axioms, first principles, and that you can't beat physics. It's really if you went through our WhatsApp chat, you would find that a lot, which goes back to discussions you and I are having a lot often about the first principles of businesses, etc. It's actually a lot of fun with you, Martin. And I think in terms of automating with machines, one of the things I think you and I, Martin, chatted about just this week was, you can throw as much generative AI as the skilled labor problem as you want, but the AI is not going to install the heat pump, right? I mean that's for sure a first principle.
Yeah, I think when we started Lun. We started from a very much climate perspective and a business perspective, which is, okay, we need a lot more of them. How can we help solve the problem, not necessarily now, but the problem that will happen in a couple of years from now? That was the thesis, and we had the timing that was incredible for us with what was happening on the energy market, etc. But the reality is that we've also understood that the building in the real world is very complicated, and you might have it's just impossible to put enough sensors in a home and in a house to make things work. And especially in the building industry, what I've also over time I've come to maybe understand is sometimes it's easier to describe a solution than it is to describe a problem. So when your plumber goes to your home and sees something, I mean, he might know what's wrong, but if he had to describe it to you, it would take like 10 hours because he would have to explain, that's because the pipe was this and this and this, and maybe for him it's easy to say, just replace that pipe. and that's a bit what we face as well, is that the reality of the world where you drill a hole and then, oops, there's a pipe or there's a cable on the other side. I mean, you can't scan your way out of it, or you can't, so I think that's also what's exciting, to be honest, is like, how can we, what role does software play in this? How can we support, but not necessarily instruct and tell them what to do? So we just like, something that they can check to help them out, but where they're always the ones that guide. So one thing that we're quite, in the way that we design the product, is we can be, again, a guide and we can be a help, but we cannot be the decision makers. Otherwise, because there are things that we just will not be able to capture. And if you have to capture it all, we're going to be building software until 2035, right? So I don't know if that answers your question. I'm a business person, so I was formed and trained to talk a lot.
I don't know, man. My ears are still looking for a response to that AI question.
No, I think
now my brain and my heart agrees with you, but I can't shake off this feeling that my checklist is missing a tick on the AI column, if you know what I mean.
I think there are certain applications that will be, AI and I think will be some sort in the background. And if your product is only AI, I think then it's basically so complicated to beat the foundational model that the large companies are going to do. So I think you will have to find how to apply AI in niche to make it super relevant, where you need to get domain expertise that is where basically the data doesn't exist in public domain. So you need to create a moat with either a lot of data or expertise. So you have to find the missing link that Facebook or whoever is never going to find.
I think where Shub is steering you is he wants to hear a claim that the next round is going to be a 105 million euro round after you thought about your next product for 4 weeks. So just provide some context from this week.
I did see that Mistral. I appreciate the French fundraisers. I think they do a brilliant job in general. We've discussed this. It's being in the venture markets is sometimes a bit weird, where you don't. Yes.
Hey, what do you mean? All I'm asking is for you to show something on AI. I think that's extremely reasonable. You're the heat pump guy, and you need to.
The reality is that people are excited about AI, and I'm just very excited about Web3, which means that basically AI is not doing it yet for me. I'm waiting for a year from now when I'm done with Web3, and we've built the blockchain that we need to have for that, for privacy purposes, etc. Then we can get on to AI.
Don't forget, we also need to add an NFT into the mix.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so we think about that, but after carbon offsets on our platform. So
that's music to my ears. Yeah, now I know why we back to Lun.
No. So as you can, maybe the reason why. So beyond I'm happy to hear that Patric liked me, but we like Patric a lot, Anders and I. And that's because we probably share the very cynical approach to many things and the bad sense of humor.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Hey, Martin, what you were talking about, what you were describing, right, as access to data for very specific applications. Patric, isn't this very similar to a chat I think you and I had maybe a month or so ago, where at least I think we were also of the opinion that AI is great, but ultimately just slapping on an AI layer on top doesn't make sense until you have a model which, even if it's in a completely analog form, has the ability to access a lot of transactions, has some sort of data supply on its own through real world transactions, and that essentially becomes the moat. And just the act of repeating on that working model, in a very old school way, that's the foundation of how you get to build AI on top of something where you can repeat in a predictable manner.
Well, or you're in a niche that so I think I'm not saying this is true, but something I could conceive is, listen, plumbers and then electricians are unlikely to be looking at ChatGPT and to be having a ChatGPT Plus subscription. So maybe, to make it decently, to make a decent business, if you find a way where you can apply that to electricians and plumbers, you might be able to build a decent business just because no one else is going to do that because no one is too small of a niche, right? I'm not saying again, this is I haven't thought that through, but I'm also thinking there might be applications that I just have no clue, and that's maybe also that because I came into the heat pump world from not knowing that much about heat pumps, if that makes sense. So I think that a lot of people are oblivious about everything you talk about, and the things that even we talk about nothing, most people will be completely oblivious about buildings. Most people have no clue how their gas boiler works or a heat pump works, which is, by the way, fine. It's one of the most boring topics ever.
I belong in that group, I must admit.
And listen, I mean, in some of the incredibly profitable companies that we see in Denmark, etc., or stuff that's just happening in the background. I mean, if you look at waste management, people, from what I understand, are making a killing. And maybe there's an AI stuff to do there. I have no idea because no one looks at it ever.
That's the point, right? I mean, when you shoot to your point, right? I mean, when you think about verticalization of AI, so there's certainly going to be like massive companies who actually own the engine. You know, I think in our discussion, Shub, I likened it to so there's one company or project, depending on how you look at it, that built React as a framework how to do mobile apps. And then there's a million companies that apply React to a vertical context and actually make a business out of that. Yeah. So I'm feeling really uneasy with how many I'm gonna back the standard model for as an AI engine and then bring it to the European context and whatever. I'm much more excited about the verticalization of that. But then, unfortunately, you will actually need to trade it on data that you cannot Google. And so that's the interesting
piece. And I think that's also what we discussed. I think when all these models came out, Patrick, I said basically, I mean, the big difference, we see super interesting models coming out. So segment anything from Meta is another one, basically allowing you to just with one click figure out, like to define objects within pictures, basically, which is quite revolutionary. And if you think about it, all the models that come out now, it's the FANG companies that are brute forcing the things based on the raw amount of data that they have. So they basically scrape the entire web, or they've asked, in the case of Meta, they've asked people to classify millions and millions and millions of pictures to have a model that functions, which is the only reason why these guys can do it. And then afterwards it can be declined in different versions, and then people do fun stuff with it. The same thing, so the room plan API, which you're looking in right now to capture things on the iPhone, for example.
The Apple thing,
Yeah, the Apple thing. I discussed with someone in the space to say, hey, I mean, tell me, and there are some, it's not perfect yet, like, can you build something better? And the guy told me, yeah, I mean, it was just 20 PhD at Apple that worked on it for a year, and they recorded thousands of European homes to make it work, basically. And they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars doing that, and they keep doing that because their PhDs are still at Apple working on that problem. Yeah. I mean, what's the chance of any company, however much money they throw at it, basically, will be able to compete with that? It's incredible.
I don't know. If you ask me the question, what is the chance of that, and you limit the time frame to the past 5 days, I'm going to tell you that chance is 100% if I go by the Strata AI's fundraise.
Well, correct. But the question is how many? So, I think it's just more complicated than just the 20 PhDs as well, right? If you need access to 1,000 homes, you need to have like a pretty good lawyer team as well. If you need to go in Germany and ask people to record their homes, you need to put like probably your firstborn in escrow or something like that to make sure.
I know one such person. Yes. Exactly.
So I believe that the model that we're seeing now, and I'm not the AI expert in any way, so it is very likely to be completely wrong, but it's basically these large corporations with billions of profits that are basically brute forcing the data they have to make models work, which is, a lot of benefits, and then there are also some cons about these technologies that I think are clearly, especially in Europe, talked about a lot. Yeah. But we get to benefit from it.
I'll tell you this though, and I don't think I've told you this, Shub, but between Martin and I, we've had this discussion. Going back to first principles, okay? So if you have put an artificial in front of intelligence, no one can still explain to me why the artificial intelligence would be, over the long period, 1,000 years, more efficient than the actual intelligence. Organisms beat mechanics every day of the week. So we're really, I think overall we're going down a very crazy path, and we're, I don't know, we're maybe sometimes missing the forest for the trees.
No, and we discussed that. I think the cost per query on ChatGPT is what, like 4 cents or something like that of the dollar.
I think it's in the cent, but I couldn't tell you what cent.
Yeah, and it's probably so, and that's directly correlated with the energy consumption because it's a server, so it's energy consumption. Yeah. So if you think about how much a 4 cent, or let's say it's 4 cents, how much that costs in electricity, it's actually quite expensive energy-wise compared to a lot of other things, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I use like about 3 kilowatt-hour in my apartment every day. I don't know how much I pay, but basically it's becoming quite significant. And yes, I think we discussed the AlphaGo thing. So to beat the best
hours per day, really? What are you running? Like a hot tub?
I have a kid, man. My washing machine is running in a permanent.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. I got it. And the PlayStation.
Yes. No place. Well, and my Bitcoin server, but that's no.
Oh yeah. The mining. Okay.
My Bitcoin farm. I'm kidding here. I don't have a
Great.
But the no. I think we are this. If you look at the amount of energy that was required to train, and I think that's what you said. Like the amount of energy. You talk about a car, which I think was super interesting as well. You were the one. Or was it you or someone else who told me about the energy consumption of a car versus a person doing it?
Oh yeah, that was our discussion. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So how much? So to go back.
Sorry, the context was manufacturing a car versus manufacturing a person until the year of 20 years of age. So that was the context.
Fascinating.
Yes. And same for AlphaGo. AlphaGo is now beating humans at Go, which was we expect that to take a lot longer time than it actually did. But the truth is that behind the AlphaGo software, you have like an insane amount of energy that has been consumed to train the model and also to run the model while it plays, right? To like multiple orders of magnitude more than the human brain, which they are beating, and until recently, not every time, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
So it's just to say that the human brain is quite good at processing food, even bad food, to brain power and to intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. And just to, so I remember the numbers now. I went through our WhatsApp chat. Martin and I were comparing. So it costs about, 20 million calories. So if you measure it in terms of if you measure the energy in terms of calories and normalize it on calories, kilocalories, I should say, kcal, 20 million kcal to manufacture a standard car. And it takes about 45 million calories to get a human to the age of 20. So now, first of all, that tells you something about the consumption behavior of humans in the Western world nowadays. But also it tells you a little bit about who's actually an efficient machine, because the human is much more flexible, obviously, and has much more use cases than that. But we're getting away a little bit from the build world here. I also want to say Nina gives you a shout out, Martin. Nina from Octopus. She says you're changing the world.
Oh, thank you. It was actually her that where her messages were popping up before. So Nina, thank you, and stop writing to me while I'm on podcast.
Only send orders, Nina. Only send orders.
Exactly.
And then Adil from school, I think, is making an interesting comment. It's also about hardware-software integration, and that. So he's saying they are literally the only ones that could do room plan. By they, I assume he means Apple. Adil, hi, how are you? I think you used to work for Apple, so I'm assuming with they you're meaning Apple. Martin, what do you think of that? Apple the only one that could do room plan?
Well, I mean, I used to work for Google, so I think the reason why Apple's the only one who can do it is because they control the hardware so well, right? So as far as I understand, there are very few Android devices that have LiDAR with the quality that Apple has, number one. And Google has always had and will probably continue to have the issue of having thousands of devices to support at the same time. And when that is the case, it's just very difficult to calibrate the software and the hardware properly. So it's definitely what we look into is like, yes, the iPhone Pro devices that are very good and strong devices, they can do this, but Android doesn't seem to be doing it properly. I think you have some specialist companies, Leica and these guys that probably, I think we discussed about iMapper together a little bit as well. So we'll see some companies that do it specifically. The question is, will it be on consumer-grade devices where an untrained person like myself can go around the scanner home properly, or will it always have to be someone who has like had hours of training to do it well, and where the processing afterwards also probably requires hours.
And I'd like to bring the whole discussion full circle, because in the end, this is practical nerds, we talk about the built world. Why is that actually relevant? So within the European context, heat pumps, the whole renovation topic that we're discussing, is by 2050 in most EU countries there will be no net new construction land. I don't know how many folks actually know this, but Germany, for example, has a policy that by 2050 no land will be issued a net new construction permit order. So by 2050, every lot that will ever get built on in Germany will have been assigned a building already. So you can only renovate or tear down, that's another thing, but you can only renovate, and that's how you will get heat pumps into place. That's why you need to scan buildings. That's why you need to understand how you can actually optimize building or constructing within an existing building. So I think that's the context that we're discussing.
Correct.
Shub,
That's totally wild when you... Sorry, I have to remark, when you put it in as stark and as direct a form as that, it's totally wild, right? It puts so many things into clear perspective on what sort of solutions are needed and where we might be headed.
Exactly. And by the way, I mean, robotics won't save us. Robotics I'm a huge fan of robotics in new construction. I think that's actually where we are making huge strides in the Western world these days, but much more difficult to apply it to existing buildings. Of course, there are processes where you can do it, but try installing a window with robotics. I mean, that's a real challenge. Try run piping on an existing building with robotics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, Shub, you're a big climate fan and climate tech, I know, right? How many climate tech investments have you done this year, Shub?
How many climate tech investments have I done this year? How low of a number am I allowed to publicly state? I think the number is probably quite close to zero.
Yeah. Martin, what do you make of that? We know you're a climate tech guru, aren't you?
Yeah, climate tech guru, that's a big word. I don't know if I should say thank you. Listen, I think that's, I can start by saying that, yes, the reason why Lun exists is because, so it's Anders and I together, but the initial discussion was very much around, we always want to work together with Anders, but I had a condition which had to be on climate, basically. And Lun was somewhere where both the interests could align, and that's what became Lun. We have an imperative. We can see very much nowadays in Europe, the consequence of climate change. I was talking to someone yesterday who was wondering how low the Rhine will go this year, basically. In Denmark, we see the agriculture sector, right now are needing help because there's a drought in Denmark. So it's a mission critical thing. It's not about whether we're going to make it as humans. I think we have resilience and we have many things that allow us to survive. The question is, what world do we want to live in, which I think is a different thing. We can survive in the ISS. It's just not super great to be on the ISS, right? So we are able to construct artificial environments for ourselves. And my perspective on startups is that, listen, we need a lot more cash in the climate action space. The question is, where is it best spent? I think there are actually relatively few places where software plays a role there. And I might be quite contrarian there and shooting myself in the foot. But I do believe that most of the investment are infrastructure problems. It doesn't have any. Actually, two things. One is political money. So spend money on buying politicians to make more climate stuff happen because fossil fuels are doing the other way.
Did you just say buying politicians?
Yeah. Because directly or now we're talking about nothing, right? So either directly or indirectly. So what I'm saying is that there are many ways in which the fossil fuel industry influence the political system. So I'm not saying buying them, like buying them off, but in different ways. Like you give them trips to, climate-friendly places. That's one, but of course that's a small part. It doesn't require that much more money. I don't think that it's a small pocket of money compared to the other things. But where the largest amount of cash will go is infrastructure. It's like the grid. It's solar. It's wind. Probably nuclear at some places as well. There will be some hydrogen in some ways or shape for the places that are hard to decarbonize. and could be ammonia as an output, for example, for ships, etc. But the reality for me is that the software is so I heard from an investor told me that the TAM of carbon accounting is smaller than the amount of money that has been thrown from VCs.
Yep, I heard that from Patric. Yep.
Talking about efficient capital distribution.
Well, I mean, you have to hope that the TAM will grow a lot larger in the future. I think that's how we put it.
Yeah. I mean, so Martin, Patric and I were just chatting, right? I mean, not that I'm against climate tech, but obviously our objective here is to make money, and what we're looking for with every single deal, frankly, right? With every single deal, every single opportunity is wherever money is there to be made. And for me, it's a theme meets a market size meets timing as well. Obviously with other things like the quality of team and so on and so forth. But I think at least in a lot of markets I cover, some of those pieces seem to not be falling in place right now. Maybe it'll change, but that's been a deficit. And I would love that whenever the stars align, to get behind some of a few exciting firms.
I completely agree, and I think luckily I've been in climate tech for some time now, which means that I have the experience of I understood quite clearly, I think, what they call the climate action gap. So what people say they do and what they actually do. I actually did some carbon accounting project at my previous company, which we shut down early because we start by saying, oh, everyone's going to need it. Let's talk to the SMEs and where they are, etc. Because of course the people that are engaged on climate, they already do it. And then I think quite rapidly we end up talking to the B Corps, so the people that already have committed to being carbon neutral by 2030, discuss with them, and the ones in Denmark. And out of 30, I believe 27 had not done it and had no immediate plan to do it, basically.
I see.
So basically people had committed, and the people are most committed and have actually gone quite far in terms of changing the structure of the corporation to live up to their requirements, etc. And yet, they're not doing it before they've committed to 2030. So for us, it was a quite. We closed that project, and it was quite eye-opening. And the reason why we started Lun, it took us quite some time with Anders. We looked at it for a year. Was because we want to make sure that what you mentioned, which is timing, market, hopefully team, made a little bit of sense. And I can tell you frankly, it was last year you could sell a heat pump on the streets in Copenhagen, super easy. Everyone wants a heat pump. And this year with exaggerating. Literally. Yeah, I'm almost not exaggerating. But I could sell heat pumps on LinkedIn. With my post, people would react and buy heat pump. The truth is, this year natural gas prices have fallen back to where they were before what happened in Ukraine, and the demand has this year been incredibly tough. So we see specifically for Denmark, and I think it's similar numbers, but in Denmark specifically, the market for retrofit heat pump installations has gone down 60% year on year.
I see.
And again, we are lucky to be well capitalized, and we're focusing on the right thing, which in the long-term problems, we can see markets, countries, banning the installation of new boilers in the future, including Germany at some point. We'll see when that happens in reality, but at the latest in 2029. And that's what, for me, gives me a positive. In 2029, you will have to install most likely a heat pump.
Look, I see. So we were making fun earlier about AI and fractional ownerships through, NFTs, for example. But if you think about, and Martin, you were also saying, right, the climate tech side, so there's something exciting about being in software for climate tech, but there's only so much you can actually solve, going back to the physics point that we're discussing, the first principles and axioms. But now tying that together, so, there's probably more avenues that you can apply innovation to within let's say, using heat pumps within climate tech, but 3 that I can think of, right? So you can innovate on the hardware, the infrastructure, the CapEx intensive stuff. There's ways to innovate on the software, which oftentimes will be tied to the processes that are being used, call it workflows. The third one is maybe some financial angle, financial engineering. And one of the things that I really don't like, and I've seen a few deals like that in Europe within the heat pump space, is There's no real process optimization. There's no innovation on the hardware, but a firm goes out and says, oh, I'm just going to build a lot of SPVs, single-purpose vehicles, for, let's say, a building. That could be a single-family home in some cases that I've seen. And I'm just making them investable. So I'm going to put an SPV around every heat pump that is going to be retrofitted, renovated into a building. And then I make it investable for all the people that need to finance this, so that the homeowner has some financing and we create an asset class out of it. Zero industry efficiency, zero efficiency on the building, zero carbon saving, nothing. I mean, yes, there's carbon saving because you replace maybe a gas boiler with a heat pump, but there's no carbon saving from the company itself versus, maybe another better heat pump or a better process that I could have installed. So I really have a disliking for these very singular financial engineering plays that could spend their time on doing something more valuable in my opinion.
And we've discussed it quite extensively. I think there's an overall question of profitability. I mean, if you look at the industry and how it's been for the last 200 years, it's very, very, most companies are below 10 employees. When I say most, it's like 95% or something like that, right? Have below 10 employees in that space. And the reason why I've realized is because then it's super easy, because then you have one person who does all the admin, the boss, and then who controls, who also does the QA, etc. But I think that where it's very difficult is to be between the 10 and the 50 employees, where you basically cannot afford to hire someone who replaces you to do HR or etc. And I think that's where it gets quite interesting when you see these very large companies that start doing plumbing or start doing PVs or etc. On what do they actually, they move the supply around, but how much more efficient are they really compared to a plumbing company? Are they much cheaper? Do they get any size of economies of scale? And so far, I'm dubious. I want to be proven wrong, just to be very clear. But it's a tough industry also, again, because of the wave, right? I mean, it depends on the energy prices and things like that.
You're giving me a layup here, so I have to go there now. Now that you mentioned the administrative efficiencies of small and medium-sized skilled trades companies in Europe and the US. So where do both of you stand on a roll-up place for, I'm going to buy a lot of installation companies, and that's why we're making them efficient. So where do you guys stand on this?
I think they will need our software. Is it a good diplomatic answer? No. Let me take a different angle, which will be the climate one. I'm wondering whether they will actually help, from marginal perspective, reduce carbon versus if they hadn't done that. It's an open question and not sure yet. So are they if they just purchased would they have installed less or fewer or more heat pumps if they had not rolled them up? It's an open question for me. I'm not convinced.
Martin, are you painting a picture perhaps of a roll-up play where the roll-up includes, for example, one, let's say an analog installer. Another rolled-up firm could be the software layer on top of the installer. Another rolled-up firm could be, let's say, something to do with sourcing the actual heat pumps, interfacing with the OEMs. And then you sort of combine these three and integrate. Is that what you're perhaps describing?
I think the reason why these roll-ups happen is that they want to gain economies of scale. That's the P model. You get more people, and then you reduce some. You deduplicate. I mean, if there are 2 HR people, then you only have one. If they have multiple ways of doing things, you just do one. So you basically reduce some of the things that are in every company. You centralize it, and then you reduce some of the costs, right? And then you have some larger, especially on heat pumps. The more volume you get, the larger discounts you get with OEMs, etc. And then you might be able also to weather the storm in the sense that, okay, if PVs don't work out, then you do heat pumps for a while and then you go back and forth. So it might give you more flexibility, maybe. And I'm saying that all these companies that go very fast right now because they've raised a lot of money, they function. I mean, I used to work at Uber where, when you don't have the tools, you just put operations people and it goes very fast. And I'm saying that at Uber, we are very happy we had tools over time to help us be more efficient, so we didn't need as many operations people. And knowing heat pumps, specifically, you will need a lot of operations people if you haven't done it before. A lot of operations people, and you'll do a lot of mistakes. So one thing that we learned is all the heat pumps you install between March and October, you'll find out if the installation was done well in November when it gets cold. So if you install a lot of heat pumps between April and October, you'll feel the pain or not, if you're good, in November. You just won't know. And I think that's where, again, our software allows you to control better these things over time. So you'll probably have fewer surprises. And if you have surprise, you can go back and say, okay, this is what happened. This is what we missed. This is what we should have done better back then. Because right now it's, when you're busy, when you have many different companies rolled up, or you just hire very, very fast at the company, the processes are usually what's going to be a pain, and you'll see that pain very late in the process, put simply. I don't know if that made sense. But I think there's a lot of heat pumps, there are a lot of different avenues. I think that, as you mentioned, there's some hardware, there's something between how do you make the heat pump, the battery, the PV talk together. There's a bit about that, which is not, some companies have solved it for themselves, haven't solved it, in an agnostic way. I think there are a lot of different things. We focus again on the software for the workflows, the processes. The financial side, I haven't seen yet something that's revolutionary like we've seen on the PV space, because it's a cost and not a money machine. You make money with a PV, you don't make money with a heat pump. So there's I hope something comes up. I think the most likely, to be honest, the innovation that will come is state-backed loans. So the government will say, hey, here's free money, or here's free interest to get a heat pump. That's what I see, maybe.
So Shub, your roll-up plays, yay or nay?
I mean, look, what are popularly called roll-up plays now? I think it's just a late-stage private equity or very a consolidation game. I think it's just a different form of M&A happening, in my opinion, and it's more, or at least the theoretical construct is, you improve your earnings multiple or you improve your sales multiple, and that's what you go by, which I think can happen, but it needs quite a few things to happen at scale, where, for example, you have a consolidation of best-in-class brands. I'm not convinced that is well suited for the venture style of investing. I will say there is perhaps a case to be made, although I think it's not conventionally thought of as a roll-up play, where you pool together 3 or 4 different firms which aren't at the same stage of service delivery, but they sort of combine together to create a completely vertically integrated firm. And I think especially there are many hard problems in the spaces that we look at, where I think they completely lack the infrastructure or lack brands, for example, or lack any kind of reliable service delivery. And I can imagine, for example, for one company to begin with, or one set of people to solve all of these things from day one is overwhelming. I think a consolidation of that sort, I think, would be quite appealing and may not be as may not suck as much capital in as what are otherwise called roll-up plays.
Right. Yeah, but if you apply a roll-up play to the installer, skilled tradespeople, SMBs, USA, Europe, you're running out of M&A targets of companies that have 200 or more FTE.
Yeah.
I mean, within a year, if not faster. So you're going to actually have to roll up thousands and thousands of companies in the long tail of this. And by the way, these people might be in an age range where they're going to work for you for a couple more years. But then all of a sudden, the asset that you bought is what? The customer contact or the address book, but not necessarily what's actually the valuable asset, which is the skill and the time.
It ties in very well with what Martin began with. I think this is another one of those problem statements where we are supply constrained. And I think it follows, if you're operating with a supply constraint, just buying up all the supply is probably not the optimal way, right? Creating new supply is the more valuable way of building a business.
So yes, and then you can just get new people or make them more efficient. And we hope people will do the first one. We need a lot more of them, and we focus right now on the second one, which we think is just as valuable and close to our skills. I mean, one thing I'll add is it's especially in the residential space, you don't see a lot of large installer companies. So what we see in Denmark is as soon as the big plumbing or electrician company they grow, they go B2B. They just don't touch the residential market. And I think it's just because B2C is a pain in the ass. And a lot of it is not because customers are stupid, but so are, everyone is stupid. I think is another way to put it. So everyone's as stupid or everyone's as clever. So everyone's the same level. That's what I'm putting. It's just like the customer is not more stupid than the plumber, and the plumber is not more stupid than the customer in general. What's interesting to us is that there's so much at this skill gap between the understanding of the world by a plumber and the understanding of the world by a customer regarding plumbing things. So like a heat pump, what is a heat pump installation? What is anything related to trade, that they are basically, it's very conflictual, this relationship, very often. Because an installer might think, hey, I'm done here, and then the customer might think, hey, what do you mean? You're missing the painting, the last touch of the painting, and the plumber will say, hey, I'm not a painter. You fix that yourself, right? So when you're a very large installer company, fixing these things at scale is very, very complicated. It's incredibly, incredibly complicated because you need not only someone who's good at plumbing, but you need someone who's very good at social skills. When in the regular, small trade, then it will be different because you can just send the boss, and the boss maybe is more used to solve customers, and then can make the decision: should we refund the guy? Should we send a painter, or what should we do? Right. So I think there's an element there that's interesting as well. So you can roll up a lot of companies, but many of them will. Rolling up residential companies, then you run out of targets even faster. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So Martin, one of the things I find the most fun about you is that you're calling politicians out on their green and companies for that matter on their green ambitions, green promises. You take no bullshit from these people. So what's the funniest story that you have experienced after you have called someone out on their green bullshit? Martin is thinking.
Yeah, so some of them it's basically rarely direct. So I hear from other people basically. So usually what happens is that I call them out, and then there could be like a stupid PR person that tries to answer, and usually they are bad at social media, so you can have fun with them with memes, etc., and they can follow. If you're like in the social media thing and you ratio them, so you get a lot more likes than they do, etc., and it's a bit awkward for them. But usually what happens, I think what they've gotten quite good at is then they just either mute me or block me or just remove my comments or something like that, which I think is fair. But I think I don't know if it's fun, but I know for a fact that people that might know me or might be associated with me, etc., sometimes you see the indirect influence of my trolling, basically, where people are saying, hey, when they're about to sign a deal, hey, by the way, like, do you know this guy? How come? Can you make sure that and so listen, maybe I should start by saying the reason why I do that, I question myself a lot regarding this specifically, because it takes a lot of energy and it's super negative energy. It's like Twitter is like 180 characters to destroy the competitor, right? Basically, and I'm spending a lot of negative energy, I'm spending time, and I'm often wondering, is it worth my time versus doing other things? But the reason why I keep doing that is that if I don't do it, then who? So there's in French there's an expression, noblesse oblige, and it can be translated into like those who can shall, basically. And I'm privileged to have the time, to have the knowledge, to have the resources to be able to take these fights. And I know a lot of people are not able to take these fights because their job is on the hook, or their family is on the hook, or whatever, or they don't have the knowledge.
So it sounds like he's starting to call us out here.
No. I haven't gone to the VC. No, I think no. Listen, I think you can see that, and I'm being. You will not doubt my words when I say that I love working with you, and I would recommend to any founder in the space that you guys are covering to work with you. So I don't know if you're looking for that but I think I really mean it, and I think that you're all the best in the business or in the specific areas you're working on.
Thank you. Yeah, that was also a very elegant segue to the paid advertising. So thanks, Martin.
Of course.
So we're actually a little bit longer than.
Yeah. I was going to say, my dear gents, we're almost closing in on a full hour, which, I don't know, Martin, we subjected you to a whole lot of torture. I mean, congratulations. You're the guest with the longest episode. I don't know if you're feeling sad right now, but that's what you got to live with now.
It's because I talk the most, so it's not necessarily positive. It's also Friday afternoon, so I don't know. My brain might be a bit fried, and I had to listen to German yesterday, so there was a bit possibly tough. No, listen, always happy to chat, and if I can help with anything, if I can help. By the way, as you also know, I'm always happy to help other founders. So if others have questions, if people want to get into the trades business and the heat pump specifically, also happy to help out, because we learned a lot last year when we were doing our own installations. And I know a lot of people look into this space, so if I can help, let me know.
So, Martin, we can't let you go without a little bit of a ritual that we are trying to establish here at Practical Nerds. That is, open your calendar for us, look into next week, and tell us what is the one meeting that you're looking forward the most to.
Let me look into. I closed everything down to make sure I did not have anyone like Nina writing to me.
This day that you had a sushi boat in northern Germany this week, so I hope you have somebody something that can top that.
Well, I hope I don't get sick of that boat. That's a good question. So next week, I have a very cool meeting with an OEM. That's quite exciting for me to see how they react. So I think we're thinking about how can potentially. I mean, now we're revealing some secrets, but maybe OEMs can help, can share tools to their network of installers, because we think that will help them save us shitloads of time on support. And if you think more long term, people are expecting hardware costs to fall over time, especially and heat pumps included. And what people don't know is that the price actually increased last year, not only because of the demand, but I think it's also because companies realized how much support they needed to help new tradespeople come on board. So I think some companies right now, OEMs, are spending so much money on supporting the installers and supporting installations. So quite excited about that. Great. And then to give a shout out to the entire team that's behind Lun and to my co-founder, we have a pretty cool, exciting meeting on Tuesday where we are looking at the rest of the year.
Nice.
What about you guys? I mean, is it only me who shares, or do you get to share?
I mean, I
can go. Mine is pretty boring. So my highlight next week in my calendar is that I'm preparing a new tender to find what's the term, to sign the auditor for all financial statements on all funds for next year. So very exciting week.
Okay. I listened to last week's episode, and we were gonna meet this week, and I was sad that you didn't say me, basically. So it's a dangerous thing as well. So now I feel like I need to give a shout out to all the people.
But hang in. That technically doesn't work, because we didn't do an episode last week, and that episode that you heard was from previous week to last week. So,
but then we also had a planned meeting there. I'm pretty sure. But I thought about it. I was like, what? He's not name dropping me. And I was thinking,
I need to keep my auditors happy. Sorry, Mark.
Yes, correct. To keep all the portfolio companies on their toes.
Right. How about you, Shub?
I mean, I also have a mostly boring calendar. So there's one thing in there which for me would be a first, I must admit. Actually, going into a deal discussion meeting of another VC firm. So I'm pretty excited. Also, quite curious and inquisitive about how that gets done. Hoping to finally learn a thing or two about VC investing. Just been winging it all these years. So hope to come back and report on how real investing gets done.
Nice.
Can you share? So for people who are outside the VC space but like to know more, can you share more light? Like, what does that mean? Is it so? How would the situation happen? Basically,
it means he's informing me that he's going to leave me and joining another firm.
So think of it like this. So I think in each VC firm, perhaps like the most sacred inner sanctum of a process would be like where you huddle on deals, pass your judgment, your verdict, in fact, even make an investment decision. And it's usually deemed super proprietary, things of that sort, right? And usually this information never gets out. And it's probably the last thing any VC will want to share with an outsider. So which is why for me it'll be like a altogether new experience.
What's the situation where that? So given this, why are you invited? That's more what I'm looking in, what I'm interested in.
To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that. So there's this other VC firm. They thought, hey, we have a open policy, right? Why don't you come in and just stay there, I guess, right? And see what goes on over here.
So Shub, heads up. Obviously we know the firm. They're good friends of ours. The founder of that firm has a reputation of actually calling out on the guests and asking them, like, to their head, what is your opinion of the deal? What should I do? So be prepared.
Nice.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking forward.
Okay.
That's a true story.
I hope you can share a little bit in the next episode. Not everything, of course, but like a little bit of how that went.
Actually, if you intend to be a regular of Practical Nerds, you'll probably get the details. Yeah.
Excited about that?
That's quite a tease. Okay. On that cliffhanger, I guess, we've tortured Martin enough for today, Shub.
Yeah.
Well, a real pleasure to talk to you always. I hope it didn't bore the hell out of the audience, and then chat super soon.
Yeah, I think the real pleasure is to be able to keep backing a founder like you. So I think super thrilled and super proud to be in that position.
Thank you, and the sentiment again is reciprocated to be part of the portfolio. So thank you.
I'm not going to pamper you with more compliments, Martin. It's it really